and Devoto and Associates are not affiliated companies.
Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. I'm thrilled to be joined by Jeannie Gallucci. Thank you so much for joining me here in studio, Jeannie. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you have a very interesting background and a very, very interesting practice. You are an attorney, but you were not always an attorney. I guess nobody really is always and forever an attorney. Jeannie, let's start by talking about your background.
Well, I have a background in hospitality. My family has a grocery store in Cleveland that's been there for over 100 years. I worked there.
If there's any confusion, Italian.
Italian, very Italian. I worked there as a child, and then I worked in hospitality as a bartender and a waitress all throughout school.
Fascinating. So how did that impact you in deciding what you do today? And I guess that's a great segue to talk about what you do today.
Yeah, so we do government relations and regulatory litigation, and I saw the effects of government relations on our family business at a young age.
So I know you've mentioned to me when we were off air, you mentioned that many hospitality businesses are small businesses, and I've certainly discovered that in my networking throughout the city of Chicago and beyond. You have fought very, very hard to make sure that government has a role but doesn't step beyond that role. Let's talk about a little bit about some examples that you're at liberty to talk about of ways that you have been able to use your background to help companies.
Well, so we like to get companies at the onset where we're helping them navigate these regulatory challenges when we understand what their business model is. But sometimes we wind up getting hired when they've already faced challenges, which means that we have to guide them through litigation. And in the course of litigating the matter, we try to solve the underlying problem so that hopefully we're in a better position for everybody to come to a settlement or an agreement, and that business can thrive in that location.
So you just mentioned location. So when a business decides to get started, I'm always fascinated by in what step they contact professionals. An attorney usually is one of those first few calls. But you say actually when finding the location, probably just after the realtor, probably the attorney is going to come in and pick the location. So why is an attorney needed for that conversation in determining where that hospitality business should be located?
So a key component of hospitality businesses is often liquor, which is highly regulated. And there's certain things that you can do on certain pieces of property that you can't do on other pieces of property. So while you're selecting your site for where your business is going to be, you should be consulting with a hospitality lawyer to find out what can you do and what can you not do and what kinds of licenses you can get in that location.
So often small businesses in particular, because they are under-resourced. I shouldn't say they, I should say we are under-resourced because so many people that walk into this studio fall into that boat. We hope that they grow and that they have a team of attorneys perhaps that are working in-house, but we know that in reality that's usually not the case. Very, very often they end up in the mode of being reactive as opposed to proactive. Meaning, it's in crisis. Somebody they get a notice on their door. Let's talk about how you recommend for small business owners to sort of balance that act of being proactive where possible.
So if you're contemplating starting a business, it makes sense to find your attorney at that point so you're making a strategic choice and not a defensive choice. But if you find yourself with violations, you need to make a quick strategic choice and find a good fit for somebody that can help you navigate that. And then the most important part of that is you have to listen to them.
Listening is indeed important. So a relationship with an attorney is a relationship hopefully should be based on trust. I know you pride yourself on offering that free consultation, probably in order to build that level of trust. Let's talk about your practice. I know you have a partner in your firm as well, another good Italian, I believe.
Yes, Paul Tanzillo is my partner. Our firm is Tanzillo Gallucci.
I want to come for lunch to your office. I can imagine it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. We do a lot of eating.
Well, that's great. So government relations, that's usually something that most people think of as something that's needed for a big business. Isn't it a sad state of affairs that small businesses need to hire attorneys and need to sort of fight the big machine?
That's one way to look at it, but government has an important role as well, which is keeping a balance between business and the people that live in a community. And so that's why it's there. But lawyers help navigate that relationship and offer suggestions that perhaps government wouldn't have come up with, or find the happy medium between the two.
So let's talk about where we are specifically. You mentioned location earlier. So Chicago, Illinois. Are things comparable to other states and other municipalities, or are we better or worse?
Chicago is in a class of its own, as with all things.
Right. Okay, so explain, please.
Yeah. So there's just a varied labyrinth of regulations in the city of Chicago. This is
Give an example.
Well, Chicago, our history with Al Capone, people are very, very careful about liquor in Chicago. So you have to be paying attention to not only the Liquor Commission, but you also have to be paying attention to the Department of Health, to the Buildings Department, to the Public Ways Department, Streets and Sanitation. I mean, everything from your flowers to your alcohol to your food has a different agency that you have to speak with, a different department that you have to speak with, and make sure that you're in compliance with their regulations.
And how much does politics play into it? I know that members of the city council, aldermen, have a unique role in the city of Chicago. They have a fair deal of power, I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely, which is why when you're selecting a location, it's important to start talking to a lawyer right then, because you need to know what that alderman thinks about that kind of business. And if they're going to be receptive, you're going to have a much easier time than if they're not going to be receptive. They control a lot here in Chicago.
And so are there any particular areas of the city that you and your partner particularly focus on, or do you cover the entire city and beyond?
Yeah, we do the city and we do the suburbs. And there's obviously some more central business districts in the city of Chicago. We tend to have more clients from those. But we are citywide and all of the collar counters as well.
Have you tried restaurants in all 77 neighborhoods?
Yes, I'm certain I have. I'm the very best at eating, so I'm sure I've made it to all of them.
So I want to start to conclude where I started, and you mentioned that your background, again, your family business, hospitality in Italian food business. Is Chicago a good place to do business?
Chicago is a good place to do business because we have such a huge community here, and people want to try things, and we are the midpoint of the whole country. Everything passes right through Chicago. There's a lot of opportunity here for businesses. There's a lot of opportunity here for people that are visiting, for people that are living here. We have very sophisticated people that live here, and they want access to sophisticated things. And we're a fun town.
We are a fun town.
Chicago is a food and drink town.
Taste of Chicago is just, I believe, a month and a half away, which will be fun. So for an individual that has an idea, and I actually spend a lot of time on this. There are many businesses, I don't want to name names because they're operating out of their basements, not exactly doing things exactly the way they should be quite yet, but they have a fantastic idea, likely fantastic food as well. They're living on a prayer, I think it's fair to say. What advice do you have for them as they decide to take the next steps moving forward?
Don't be afraid of moving too slowly. Just be afraid of standing still. Consult people that you trust and then follow their advice. And if you spend a little bit of time on the front end on legal, not just money, but time on legal, it'll save you a fortune on the back end. If you just carefully plan. Strategy is everything.
Proactive versus reactive. And what about the other professionals? I know obviously your focus is obviously on the legal side. What about having a business plan? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it all.
Absolutely. And you want to have not just a good lawyer, but you want to have a great accountant as well. You want to have a really good team on both your financial end and your legal end. The same can be true for saying that you want to have, if it's a restaurant, you need to have a great chef. You know, whatever you're doing, you need to surround yourself with people that really know what they're talking about. You need to come together with a good plan and then execute that plan.
Fantastic. So, Jeannie Gallucci, we are running out of time. You've provided some fantastic advice, not just for, as I would call it, foodie businesses, but for many, many others as well. Appreciate it and look forward to having you back on. But in the meantime, how can folks reach you and your law firm?
On our website, which is Tanzillo Gallucci, but we've also come up with TG Law Group. .net, so that you don't have to deal with all those double consonants. And you can reach me at Jeannie, Jeannie, at tglawgroup.net.
tglawgroup.net.
You can call 312-878-2718.
Well, I encourage all of our listeners, make that call, be proactive. As I said earlier, Jeannie, we appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much. We offer a free consultation. I really appreciate being here. Thanks.
Of course. Coming up, we'll be back and get down to business. Don't touch that dial, Chicago.
At AM 560.